I host a podcast called Little Known Facts that this conversation is going to be on in the future. And I'm so grateful to Jill and Dave for inviting me to do this with Belle Burden. Your book's extraordinary. And 2 summers ago, I was on Dave and Joe's porch on Martha's Vineyard, and Dave was talking about this idea to create a gallery, a community space where artists could come, obviously show work on the wall, but also to really focus on community and having a place for people to come and not just see beautiful art, but just start having conversations with each other in a world that doesn't happen as much as it should anymore. So the idea that sitting around like Joe's beautiful meal that she made in the kitchen the size of this microphone and stuff keeps coming out of her kitchen and she is glorious in creating community that way. But Dave, like you've done it, and we're sitting in this room surrounded by beautiful paintings with some of the most extraordinary people in New York City on a cold Saturday afternoon, and I'm really moved by that. And I am really grateful that we get to be the inaugural podcast together, because some of you may have read it, some of you may have seen The Modern Love. This is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read, and it really hits in all these ways, and I feel like we are old friends. We have friends in common,
Yes.
But I feel like the generosity in your book is really extraordinary, and I really want to thank you before we get into conversation for writing this and being so vulnerable and brave, and also just such a fucking great writer. It's incredible. I do think we should start,
Okay.
because everyone's here. Are we recording?
We are recording.
Okay.
And I should mention a couple things. I feel like I'm in a movie theater now, but
Turn off your cell phone.
don't make a lot of noise with your popcorn. Turn off your cell phones because it is a podcast, or at least put them on vibrate. And what else? If you have to go to the bathroom, which is right here, maybe now's the time, or maybe just hold it for 30 minutes. I think you'll be all right. You took away some of my thunder by telling all about your podcast, but what you didn't mention is that she's now interviewed close to 500 authors, Broadway stars, actors. For those of you who have not tuned in yet, it is a gem, and I strongly encourage you to do so. And especially now, because you'll want to hear, if you can hear.
Wait, can you come in next to me? Come here. You're like right behind me. I don't know what's happening.
Kind of moving over your shoulder there. I know, it's a little creepy, isn't it? Anyway, so I urge you to tune into Little Known Facts, and if you've not read the book, obviously you should read the book. It's great. The piece that ran that maybe some of you have read is terrific, but the book really fleshes it out and works forward and backward, and is well worth it. Oh, someone's trying to come in here. And I am recording here, so if any of you have a problem with, well, you're just like the top of your head, the few of you, I think you'll be all right. So without further ado, let's get going, shall we? All right. Joe, do you mind? Should we lock the door or no? I don't know how precious we have to be about this.
It's not live. We can edit out any. If someone comes in, it's all good.
Oh, that's exciting. So we can custom everything?
Yes, it's live that we're live in person, but this
Okay.
is not being streamed as a live stream. So let's go.
All right, terrific.
People are welcome to come. You can go to the bathroom during the event. It's okay. Everyone be as human as you need to be. And we're not using this. We'll just talk.
You know, I don't know if we need it. It's kind of fun, but I think we don't need
All
it.
right. Okay.
All right.
You're
I'll
gonna
just
have
turn
to
this
even
on.
better.
Your new Belle Burden voice.
Yes,
That
I'm
is
still working on that.
We can sound away here for you.
So I just want to start by saying that Belle Burden is an attorney who specializes in juvenile immigration cases, and she is also the author of the New York Times best-selling memoir, #1 on the New York Times list. It's called Strangers, a Memoir of Marriage, and really, like, the speed with which this book has entered the universe is pretty extraordinary. I can't imagine you were even prepared for it. If you wanted just to say
Yes. I really wasn't. I really expected it. Well, first, when you're writing a book, you imagine publication and you don't imagine a lot after that. And I thought it would be a book that would maybe get some momentum after several months, maybe a year, where people had sort of passed it around. Someone who's getting divorced, someone who's going through something very unexpected. I did not expect this kind of very quick reaction. Part of that is because Dial Press, which is my publisher at Random House, did an incredible job with press. And I think press is easier with a memoir than with fiction, because there's a story to tell. So that helped, but there was this really just incredible, almost avalanche of response from women all over the world, because it was published in the UK and in Australia, but also people were downloading it and listening to it. And I heard from people who had been through the same thing, an amazing number actually, because I felt like I was so alone in this. People who identified with it because they had been through a divorce and felt some shame in that, and then just people cheering me on, which has felt really amazing. So it was a shock, and I'm still kind of adjusting to this.
Finding your equilibrium.
Yes.
You know, I interview a lot of authors. I have not interviewed that many memoirists.
Mm-hmm.
And a question I also often ask my authors is, can you describe the protagonist of your book to me?
Yeah.
And in this case,
It is me. Yes.
but I would love if you would do that. I'm going to ask you to do two kind of very typical book talk things.
Okay.
One for like the one person here who has no idea what the fuck we're talking about.
Yes.
Like the elevator pitch of what the book is about.
Sure.
And then I would love for you to talk about the protagonist in this book.
Sure. So my book starts in March of 2020. I was on Martha's Vineyard. My husband and I had gone there to quarantine. It was the second week of quarantine. I think you all remember that week. And we were happy to be there. It was very isolated. It was very cozy. My husband loved the woods, and he was chopping wood and building fires and making dinner. And I was trying to keep up with house cleaning, which I'm not very good at, and taking walks. And it was a scary time. We didn't know when there would be a vaccine, but it was also very like cozy, very family time where it gave me a real sense of safety. And one night I was mopping the floor and I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize, played the voicemail, and it was someone saying, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but your husband is having an affair with my wife." And that night I was just completely shocked, but my husband really tried to explain it and say it didn't mean anything. But by the morning he came into our bedroom fully dressed with a bag packed, with a completely different affect, all warmth gone, and said, "I want a divorce. I thought I was happy, but I'm not. And I'm leaving." And he walked out of the house, got into his Jeep, got onto a ferry, and left. And at that moment became someone I did not recognize. And I had to figure out how to literally get up off the bathroom floor,
Right.
and try to figure out a new life for myself and for my kids.
Okay.
Yes.
So
The
that's,
protagonist. Yes.
that is one of the most painful things that can happen to anyone in the planet. Before we get into it, I just want to say it is only a few years later.
Mhm.
It's 2026 for 1 minute. And the idea that we are sitting here right now in such a short period of time, like surrounded by many people who love you, and many people who have now fallen in love with you because of your strength and storytelling. Like, I can't quite believe how fast that is. And I can't imagine on this night, if we kind of time travel backwards,
I
that
would
you
not.
could have ever imagined like this is where it would land. So
Would
let's go
never
over
have
the last
imagined
6
things.
years.
Yes.
So-
We will.
On that night,
Yes.
when he sort of like I really, it's really like I would think, are you speaking in tongues? Like, I don't understand what you're saying to me, but you realize it's real because he leaves.
He leaves.
He means it. He means some version of it.
And I should have said, I think of when you're asking about the protagonist.
Yeah.
I believed I was very happily married. I was very much in love with my husband. I was very much in love with my family, 3 kids, married for almost 21 years, and I really believed in family. I come from divorce, both my parents, my mother and my stepfather, and I think it's what I wanted more than anything in life, was
Right.
a family.
Right.
So, and my husband had not given me any indication that he was unhappy. He was a very steady, mild-mannered man who went to bed at 9 o'clock. So it was not a situation where there was fighting, where there was therapy, where there was all this kind of tumult that would have indicated it was coming. So there was just this real, like, chilling shock of someone saying that to you where you have no lead up to it. And in terms of it being 6 years, it feels like yesterday. I can put myself back in the kitchen mopping.
Right.
And then it also feels like just this a huge expanse of time where a lot has happened between then and now.
When you think back, it's so crazy to me, the number of friends I have in my life who only found out that something was going on because they got a phone call from the other person's partner. Like,
Yes.
it's a very common trope in terms of how the reveal happens. And many of my friends wonder if that person hadn't wanted to like bring the house down on you.
Yes.
Like, if my house is falling down, you don't
That's
get to
what it
have
felt
your
like.
house standing.
Yep.
At the time, did you think if that gentleman hadn't called you, that the dominoes would not have fallen in the way they did?
I do think about that, and I don't think they would have fallen in the way that they did, but I think they probably would have fallen eventually. I sometimes wonder, do I wish I never got that phone call? And maybe this would have passed and we would have just kept going. But I'm glad he called now, which we can get to.
Yeah.
But I also think that it was the combination of him calling and the pandemic, which I think isn't to blame, but I think it was an accelerant
Right.
and an intensifier to be in that house together where we were all getting along and it's not like a cramped space. But I think the fear that we all felt and that he probably felt and the responsibility, I think, intensified the feeling of that rupture and like, how are we going to go forward? And I got to get out of here.
Right. You talk so much in your book about what walking meant to you.
Yes.
Sort of when you get off the bathroom floor, which, bravo, I would maybe still
Took a
be on
long
that
time.
floor. Yes.
I had to speed it up through the book, but it took a long time.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Well done. And you said you weren't great at cleaning, so I'm assuming the bathroom floor was pretty clean. It's all good.
And that it was really,
It
really
was
well
not great.
done. It was not great. Yeah.
First of all, remembering COVID, like in some ways it feels like many moons ago, and in other ways we all have little moments where like, right, remember in COVID when we used to do this or we used to do that?
Like wipe down the packages.
Yes, and do we? And then like I didn't wipe it down. It's like checking if my children were okay, and they were. One of them is here to prove that very point. When you sort of think about how isolating that time is anyway, and obviously you are a woman with 2 legs and 2 arms, and you can be in a house and run a house, but suddenly this guy leaving also during a pandemic just adds a whole layer of insanity to the story.
It did, because we all felt we were living in the Twilight Zone.
Anyway,
and then this was like an extra Twilight Zone. And where you're like, what is real? And what was my life? And what was real in my life before? And it was also very isolating. I think these, when something like this happens, it's isolating anyway, because you don't want to tell people. I ended up telling people, but no one could get to me.
Right.
Like
your family.
My family could not come, my
Yeah.
close friends. And I really don't like the phone. It's like not my comfort zone. But I had to depend on it. And I had some friends, one who's over there, who called me every single morning. And Jo is so amazing at that. She doesn't make it pressured. She just it's like this casual check-in. And I had another friend who did that too, and other people really checking in on me. And that's how I finally did get up off the bathroom floor, out of bed. I was like in bed. I would just get back into bed as often as I could. I only got out of bed when my kids really needed something where I had to pretend that everything was okay.
That acting. I mean, we all do it.
Yes.
It's like acting
And
like
not
everything's okay.
Not well at all when your eyes are all swollen. But walking it was a really important element. And it was because a friend said, just walk down the driveway.
Okay.
Just try that. And it became a real meditation. It became, it was a big part of my day, walking 8 miles. And I had some kind of accomplishment, and also really was walking through the pain, because I was literally sobbing as I walked, because I could do that, no one was there.
Were you listening to music, or were you just in your thoughts?
I listened actually to a divorce memoir that came out 20 years ago. A friend of a friend had written it. It's called Happens Every Day by Belle Burden.
I know Isabel. I love it. She's amazing.
She's amazing.
That's a great
She started this genre.
Yes.
And that was really comforting to hear someone telling that story. And I think that stayed in my head. And is part of the reason why I wrote this, is that it actually can help people to it can be company for people who might be going through this. I listened to that. I listened to Heartburn, which is Nora Ephron's fictionalization of what happened in her life, similar story. And I listened to a book called Untamed, which is a Glennon Doyle book. I remember that. And then eventually music. But at that time, it was more like just listening. I couldn't read. I couldn't even watch TV, but walking and listening did help me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's funny when you think back at that time, it was very isolating, but it was also a way to kind of hide what was really going on in our lives.
Yes.
Because we were so isolated. So you had this thing working for you and against you in a way at the same time.
I didn't have to go to pickup. I didn't have to
Answer
socialize
questions.
or not socialize or answer any questions. And people were unaware of it for a while. And that kind of gave me a little bit of a bubble to absorb it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You tell this story in the book, which is really, Joe, I brought it up to Joe and she's like, oh, the sandwich.
Yes.
There's a moment in this book where her ex-husband comes back because you sort of ask him to come back so you can tell your kids together what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out to be an incredibly short visit for the
90
task
minutes.
ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, 90, a tight 90.
Tight 90.
So can you just explain,
The
I don't want to give away all the greatest parts of this book, not that
okay.
they're great in terms of
No.
entertaining,
But the
but
sandwich
great because the specificity of it is what makes the humanity of this book so accessible and incredible. So can you just tell it, because if you haven't read it, you're going to be like, this is an extraordinary thing that has happened.
And it
amidst
surprised me
everything
what a
that's
lightning rod it is.
Yeah.
It makes some people very angry, and it makes some people really question would they have made the sandwich or not. So we tell the girls, or my ex-husband tells the girls, that we are getting a divorce, that he hasn't been happy. And my younger daughter, who was 12 at the time, ran downstairs, just hysterical. My middle daughter sort of just sat there looking at her father, and she's sitting there, and my then husband looks at me and says, I'm hungry, can you make me a sandwich? And in my head, I'm thinking, what would a good mother do in this circumstance? We are meant to, or the world tells us, the highest priority is to get along with your ex, to act like you are going to be kind to each other, that you are going to take care of each other in some way, even though you're separating. So that's going through my head. The other side of my head is saying, make your own sandwich. You used to live here. You know how to do that. But I decided in that moment, because my daughter was sitting there, that I would, in fact, make him the sandwich. So I said, go find our other daughter. And I went to the kitchen. And then I had another moment thinking, I'm not going to make a bad sandwich. I'm going to make the best sandwich he has ever had.
Yeah.
So I toasted the bread. I mixed turkey and avocado and tomato and salt and pepper. It was everything. And because at that moment, he was so changed that I didn't actually want him to stay, but I wanted him to leave thinking, how could I leave a woman who makes such
Yeah.
and the sandwich representing everything,
Yeah.
the home and the nurturing and the everything that we had built together, and the sort
And
of
how we show
irreplaceable
love.
thing, and how we
Yeah.
show love.
Yeah.
So yep, I did make the sandwich, but I think some people wouldn't have.
Or they would have put poison.
Exactly.
There's lots of options
There are lots
for
of
the
options.
sandwich.
It's true.
I don't want to give away too much of the book or make you retell it, because it's the best read, and you'll cuddle up with it, and you'll just really feel lucky that this woman is sharing such an intimate story, and such an incredible story of like rebirth. And I am sure 6 years ago when this happened, the idea that anything about this would feel like this might be the best thing that ever happened to me.
Would never have
But
done
of course not.
Mhm.
Of course not. And also, it's not just you, it's your family and your kids and his
Mhm.
family. I mean, we marry each other's families.
Yes.
We don't just have our own.
that.
It's a lot of people
Yes.
that are involved in the breaking up. But I feel like I just want to harken to something, because I think I look at like how quickly one generation can shift, like really shift the DNA
Mhm.
of a family story.
Yeah.
And I'm not outing you. This is part of your story. Babe Paley
Yes.
is your grandmother.
Mhm.
And famously, when Truman Capote sort of befriended all of these women, society women, he learned all their stories. They confided in him, and then he wrote them and shared them. And I didn't think it was a great miniseries, The Swans, but you did get a kind of like sketch of what happened in that world. And the idea that they all stopped talking to him and like canceled him because he revealed these intimate truths about all the affairs that their husbands were having and who they were having the affairs with. And so the idea that in two generations now, right? Like you are her granddaughter. Not only are you not canceling anybody who shares your intimate story, you've taken full ownership of the story. You've written it in your words. You have been rather fair to your ex-husband. I feel like I'm sure people come to you and say, but you had kids, how could you write it at all? Of course. Of course. Or not even a criticism, a question. If someone's dealing with it in their own lives, like, do I dare? And I know to a person, every single friend of mine who has gone ahead and go, it's mine to tell. You guys can tell your story. He can tell his story. I'm just telling mine. And I feel like it was incredibly generous in the telling. I don't know how he feels, but as a reader, I feel like I know very little about him and a lot about you and how you navigated it.
Well, that's what ended up happening, because I think in both in my life and in the book, which is an initial just desperation for answers to understand why this had happened and why he wanted to leave. And was it because of the other woman? Was it because of me? Was it because of money? Was it what was it? And ultimately, it was impossible to find that answer without giving away too much. And so I really had to shift away from that and really had to shift to myself, and not blaming myself, but looking at the decisions I made over 20 years in finances and career and all those things that put me where I was, and also what I wanted my life to look like going forward. And in terms of being fair about him, I was very conscious as I wrote the book that my kids would read this book. There's nothing in this that's surprising to them.
Because they lived it.
They lived it, and they currently live it. But I also think, especially in a divorce memoir where there can be a villain and a victim, it's very easy to just tip it just way too much towards the villain, and you can add just one too many detail, and it can just feel like a piling on. So I was very conscious of that the whole time. And there was a lot more I wanted to put in here, and there's stuff that I just kept taking out. And as I did that, it just kind of like the balance felt better.
Right.
And I can speak to my grandmother for a little bit if
you
want me to.
Of course.
So, yes, there is the Truman Capote element where she felt very betrayed by having that story added because she trusted him. But the other element for me was that she really never spoke about it except to Truman maybe, but she really just, to be a graceful woman, to be a good woman, you don't talk about those things, and you clean them up, and you protect the man really, and you make sure that the man still feels powerful and in control and important. And then my mother, they were both very accomplished women. My mother is a very accomplished woman in their own spheres, but she also was with an unfaithful man for a very long time, and she also stayed very quiet about it. She also cleaned up the mess. He also remained very powerful. And when this happened to me, I thought, well, I really thought I married someone who's the opposite of that, where this would never happen to me. Married someone very calm, very steady, but I repeated it in this spectacular fashion.
But I win.
I win. Their men wanted to come back, begged for forgiveness, mine didn't. So I thought, what is it about this? Like, why does this get repeated across generations? Was I attracted to that without really being conscious of it? Was he attracted to me because of that? Like, and how do you stop this from repeating? And the answer that I arrived at is to stop cleaning up the mess. Stop just saying nothing happened, everything's fine. Be honest about what happened to me, acknowledge the reality of it. And so I had that sort of, intellectual thought, but I also, from the moment it happened, my ex said to me, we should say it's amicable. Like, that's better for you. Like, he started telling people, we've decided we're divorced. And with every cell of my body, I could not lie about it. Which is surprising because I'm a shy, private person. But as soon as I would run into someone, I would say, he left me, and I have no idea why, and I am in absolute agony. And that really has been true the entire time. I just thought it was life or death. If I lied about it, I would not survive it.
There are people in our lives who go through the loss of spouses, or I mean, grief comes to us for so many reasons.
Absolutely.
You also lost your dad shortly before this happens in the book. One of the things I really got from your book is, even if you don't know exactly what to say, like, not most people don't have experience with what you went through.
Yeah.
There's a version of it, but this is like very extreme.
Yes.
And you're saying to them, oh, thank you for asking. I'm in agony.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's a hard thing for anyone to respond to. In your kind of living this out loud now, do you feel like people should just try, or if you don't, like, how do you think, do you have any?
It was such a learning experience on that.
Yeah.
And people have focused in the book, there were a few difficult moments
And
in people's
angel
reactions.
people also.
There were angel people. Some of them were here, like angel
they got
people.
front
Who just really moved towards me. And people also I didn't know very well who would come up to me, like that man on the bicycle who just said, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. And it was enough. Like, that one sentence was enough to feel acknowledged and seen. And the truth is, I wouldn't have done that. I would have
because you're a shyer, more reserved
I just
person.
thought they don't want to talk about it, and I'm not going to bring it up. And so I think I have had such modeling, other people modeling for me how I want to be on whatever someone's going through, to move towards them and just say something, even if it's like a really dumb thing to say. I think it's better to say something and to just try and scoop someone up and not move away from them.
I want to, there's so many kind of writerly questions I want to get into.
Yeah.
And then before we open it up to questions, so please, if anyone wants to ask a question also, we will do that. I think that person might want to come in. We talked at tea, when you and I had tea, about sort of, you had written as a younger person, and sort of put that part of your creativity away as you pursued Harvard Law School.
Not Harvard Law School.
Sorry.
NYU Law School. Harvard undergraduate.
Oh, let me start again.
Sorry.
Wrong order. No, but just this idea of, like, obviously when you're writing a lot, right? Your 10,000 hours as a writer is happening. It's just in the law route. Like briefs and all of that versus creative writing. And you told me that, like, as a younger person, you were a creative writer.
I was.
When did you start, because the modern love piece obviously came out way before the book, that is a culmination of your deciding to do this. Like, how did the writing come back to you?
I think it was a few things. And for those who haven't read the book, when I was a kid in high school, I thought I wanted to be a writer. I'd won prizes and stuff. And I got to college and I was in a creative writing seminar that I had to apply to. I was 18 and all excited. And an older student, a senior, read my first short story and said that I couldn't write, that I had no talent. And instead of thinking, he's just some guy and he's going to forget it in 30 seconds, I believed him and I stopped writing for 30 years.
Wow. Well, he's here today.
So I think, yes, I wrote all along as a lawyer. There was an opportunity to write, and I think actually that style of writing, trying to tell someone's story in a legal brief efficiently and persuasively, informed my style of writing, which is a little more spare and direct. But during this process, there were a few things that happened. A month after my husband left, I had to submit a filing in family court in Queens for a client, an immigration client. And I was a mess. Remember, I'm on the bathroom floor.
Right,
And
right.
I have to pull it together to write this thing, to do affidavits, to interview my client and her mother, and even to just like use the printer. Like, it was really hard to do any of it. And I did a bad job of it. Thank God I have a law partner. But slowly we kind of got it together, and we did the filing, and we ended up getting the designation that we needed to for our client. But I think in doing that, and actually like just using words and putting them on a paper to describe someone's story, there was something about it that just brought me back to life a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the next thing that happened was in my divorce, I had to prepare a counterclaim, which was a 20-page document. I was doing it with my lawyers, but I had to write the financial story of my marriage, which was actually a harrowing story. And something about that gave me a sense of agency.
Uh-huh.
And then in 22, when I started writing Modern Love, I think I started writing it because when something like this happens, there are a lot of different narratives that flow around about what happened to me. And I wanted to get it down on paper, but I started to get interested in the art of it too. Like, how do you create suspense? When do you bring in the phone call from the other person? And I started to get interested in that. But big picture, I think in marriage, and a long marriage like mine, where there are kids and there's affluence and all these things, there's just a lot of fluff that gets kind of like this comfortable life.
Mm-hmm.
And when all of this happened, it was like all of that stuff got like chipped away, all those like pillars of my life, all that comfort. And something about that, about like just being at rock bottom, made me able to access that again. So as I sat down to actually write this piece that became Modern Love, it was there again. Like, I was with that person again, which is pretty extraordinary and not what I would have expected.
Right, right. There's sorry, you guys, something's broken in my chair, so I'm going to use it.
That's my fault.
It's I just have to share something that happens at the end of this book that sort of, to me, so expressed exquisitely the journey that you have been on. So at the end of the book, I don't remember what page, Belle sees her ex-husband as she's taking a walk. And he's yelling to her, like, hi, hi.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's so excited to
Mm-hmm.
see you, the way you would like to see an old friend on the street.
Yeah.
Like, it's so incongruous with the
Mm-hmm.
experience. And you see him, and you're with your friend. And
He's here.
so you have lived experience. And you keep walking. Like, and I just thought, like, it really gave me chills as I read it, because to me, like, the period at the end of the sentence is like, you are a stranger to me now.
Mm-hmm.
We had an extraordinary 20 years together. You have 3 magnificent children.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was true.
Yeah.
The house, the ospreys, like the family that you made, the club of friends that you have, the dinners, the tennis games, his family, like, all of that was true,
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Yeah, I
Right?
do too.
Like, that
Mhm.
was real. And then this other thing is
Mhm.
real.
Yeah.
They both live at the same time. And just the idea that you could just keep walking,
Mhm.
not make him a sandwich
No,
at any
yeah.
time,
Yes. Yeah.
not feel like, oh, is this an opening for me to like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, look, he's so happy to see, right? Like, I just thought that was a really incredible, I don't know, I just thought it was so exquisite.
Thank you. And
You're
it actually happened, and and as soon as it happened, I thought, this is, because I was already writing the book, and I think it does bring that moment. First of all, him waving, he just has a whole different version of this, which is like, everything is
Right.
fine.
Right.
Everything's
Look, it
great.
worked out.
Yes. But it does bring up what you just said, that there were those 20 years, and it was very important to me in this book to reconstruct that, to reconstruct the story of us falling in love, to reconstruct the many years we had that were very happy as a family, that may have changed for him at some point. I don't know when. I still don't know when. And that it was something that ended badly, and that both those things, as you said, could be true. But it was also a moment where I looked at him as someone I just don't know anymore. and had that feeling that he just does not really know me anymore because I had changed. I've not changed as a person, but I have evolved over the last several years since we were together.
Will you, to close out this part of the conversation, will you read just a little from the
Sure.
book so people get to hear it in your voice?
Absolutely.
And then we'll
Just
open
pick
it
a
up to
part towards
questions.
the end. This was after Modern Love came out. As the summer progressed, I continued to absorb people's reactions. The cloud of hurt threatened to consume me again, the sinking feeling that I would be alienated, judged, excluded. It felt so familiar, a particular pain that highlighted all I had lost, all that was missing, all that was wrong with me. In the dark of the night, I was my own harshest critic. You've embarrassed yourself. You're a selfish, vengeful person. You're a bad mother. But in the morning, as I walked the loop I'd mapped into 2020, I was able to steer myself through it again, through the noise and opinions, reminding myself why I wrote the piece, why it mattered, why it wasn't wrong. I could see that the voice in my head, the one shaming me, had been there since I was a little girl, warning me against speaking up, especially about a man. I could see that voice was sexist. I could see that it was silencing. I could see that some people, both online and in person, were uncomfortable with me coming out of my lane, a place where women stay quiet, where men are allowed to do what serves them, no matter what the wreckage. I could see they were defending something bigger, a way of life, the safety it gave them. I could see that when I was told I was too upset, too hurt, too open, words used against me since the first days after James's departure, it shifted the narrative. Once a woman is painted as a hysteric, the rest of the story is washed away. I could see that many of my detractors had said nothing to me about James leaving. To them, a woman writing about a man leaving is somehow worse than the man leaving. I started to tell myself what I should have known from the beginning. Some people will root for me, some won't. When I wrestled with the harshest judgment leveled against me, the labeling of me as a bad mother, another voice started to emerge. What if telling the story publicly, saying what happened to us, actually helps my kids? What if seeing their mother rise, seeing her claim her life, giving clarity to their experience is the greater gift? Isn't this possible too?